Hi there, thanks for joining us today. My name is Elio Peraza, and I am the ALS Program Coordinator here at NIH. I'd like to welcome you to today's Technical Assistance webinar, where we'll take a deep dive into what potential applicants should know and should consider when applying for the FY25 ALS Intermediate Population Expanded Access RFA. This RFA was released on September 26, 2024. So as you see here, this webinar is an opportunity to get a bit more context about the Expanded Access RFA and to walk through what the pre-application and the application processes look like. You will hear from our program staff who lead the NINDS divisions of clinical research and translational research and the study review process. We will have a Q&A session after this recorded portion, so please submit your questions in the Q&A box and we will do our best to answer them. I will now hand it off to Drs. Amy Zhou, Emily Caporello, and Ernie Lyons to walk you through RFA-NS-25-024.
This is a reissue of a funding opportunity the NIH released to implement a component of Act for ALS. As you may know, Act for ALS was signed into law by President Biden in December of 2021, and Section 2 of the law directed the NIH to set up a grant program to conduct scientific research using data from expanded access for investigational drugs or biological products in ALS. NIH started implementing Act for ALS in fiscal year 2022 and has funded 5 studies in the past 3 years. Specifically, this funding opportunity seeks to fund expanded access for an intermediate-sized population of patients living with ALS who are not eligible for ongoing clinical trials for the prevention, diagnosis, mitigation, treatment, or cure of ALS. The FDA considers an intermediate-sized patient population for an expanded access IND to be more than one patient, but generally fewer patients that are treated under a typical treatment IND or protocol. Here are some key dates for applicants to know. Letters of intent are due on December 26th. Of course, a letter of intent is not required, but it is helpful for NINDS to receive such letters so we can plan for peer review. The application due date is January 24th, 2025, and the scientific peer review will happen in March. This slide includes key requirements and considerations for this RFA. First, we want to emphasize expanded access is regulated by the FDA. Thus, it's critical that applicants provide documentation such as a may proceed email or letter from the FDA prior to receiving NIH funding. Furthermore, applicants must submit an intermediate-size expanded access IND application to the FDA no later than the same day the grant application is submitted to the NINDS. It's important to highlight the investigational drug or biological product must not be approved under a new drug application or licensed under a biologic license application. If this is the case, the medical product would not be eligible for this program. Institutional Review Board approval of the protocol and informed consent documents are not required at the time the application is submitted. However, they are required prior to funding or the initiation of treatment of patients. Applicants must follow NINDS guidelines for monitoring clinical trials, which can be found at the NINDS website noted here. Also, they must describe a scientific research goal. The Expanded Access Protocol will provide patients with access to treatment with the investigational medical product and simultaneously generate data to support research or development related to the prevention, diagnosis, or treatment of ALS. Such data can include biomarker data, safety or outcome information, or patient experience data that is not specifically tied to efficacy. Applicants must also describe how the proposed expanded access research program will not interfere with patient enrollment in ongoing clinical trials for investigational therapies for ALS. And finally, applicants are strongly encouraged to establish relationships with patient advocacy groups to solicit input on recruitment, the clinical meaningfulness of the question being asked, the relevance of the proposed clinical outcomes, and approaches to minimizing the burden on study participants.
We'll now talk about eligibility under RFA-NS-25-024 in accordance with ACT for ALS. It's important to note that the applying organization must be a participating clinical trial site within a definitive efficacy trial designed to provide pivotal data to support the marketing application for an ALS drug. Both Phase 3 and Phase 2/3 interventional drug trials qualify as definitive efficacy trials under RFA-NS-25-024. In addition, the sponsor of the definitive efficacy trial must be a qualifying U.S. small business concern. Please note that the drug sponsor cannot apply to RFA-NS-25-024 directly, as the applicant must be a clinical trial site. Ideally, the expanded access study proposed under RFA-NS-25-024 will be approved by the FDA by the time of the application submission. However, applicants may submit their expanded access IND to the FDA anytime up to the date they submit their application to NIH. Now let's take a closer look at requirements for the investigational ALS drug proposed to be studied under RFA-NS-25-024. The drug may be a biologic or a small molecule, and the drug is eligible from the onset of the clinical trial until a regulatory determination has been made regarding approval. The drug cannot be approved under an NDA or BLA. Also, the definitive efficacy trial does not need to be active at the time of application, but it does need to be active by the time an award is made. Finally, please note that the drug sponsor must be a U.S. small business, which is defined under the United States Code. Please note that NINDS cannot determine whether a sponsor is a qualifying small business. The drug sponsor must determine this and certify eligibility prior to award. NIH provides many online resources to assist you in applying for NIH funding. To get started, we highly advise going to grants.nih.gov, the website shown here, where you'll find an extensive list of resources to help with writing and submitting your application. If you are unable to find information you need, you are welcome to reach out to us at NINDS with any questions you have. It is important to follow all application instructions to avoid having your application withdrawn. Make sure to read the full text of RFA-NS-25-024 carefully, follow the instructions within the application guide, stick to page limits and formatting instructions, provide complete budget information, and follow guidance for additional plans and attachments. If you have questions as you are preparing your application, we welcome you to reach out to NINDS program staff.
Once your application has been submitted to the NIH, like all applications, it'll undergo a two-step review process before a final funding decision can be made. The first step is the independent peer review of the scientific and technical merit, and that's done by other scientists. And in this case, as we do in some cases, we will also have patients or people affected by ALS on the initial review panel. But this initial review should be free of any other outside influences, funding considerations, programmatic priorities. These kinds of issues are discussed at the second level of review. The first level of review is just a scientific review, and it's focused on the criteria that are listed in Section 5 of the RFA, and we basically follow the standard review criteria: significance, approach. Those are the two really important factors that reviewers tend to focus on. And then there are other factors unique to the RFA, such as will this data further our understanding of ALS pathology, things like that. Those can be found in the RFA. And so reviewers will consider all these criteria, assign a final score, and then, as I said, the second level of review will then make a recommendation on whether to go forward with funding.
So let's talk about cooperative agreements, or so-called U-series awards. Cooperative agreements are a support mechanism that NIH frequently uses for high-priority research areas that require substantial involvement from NIH program staff. This programmatic involvement goes above and beyond the normal stewardship role NIH program staff typically take on. However, NIH program staff will not assume direction or primary responsibility in the research activities. The dominant role and primary responsibility will reside with the award recipients. Benefits of a cooperative agreement can include: it allows for an active partnership between NIH and the investigator team with more frequent communication. Also, an NIH program scientist will be part of your team. And it will allow us to connect you with resources across NIH to resolve challenges and overcome barriers. This slide provides an overview of the roles and responsibilities for cooperative agreement awards. The principal investigator of the research team will have primary responsibility for the overall scientific and administrative leadership for the research project as a whole. This includes performance of the study, reporting recruitment data, conducting quality control, data analysis and interpretation, and modifying the study design if needed. Award recipients will also retain custody of all the research data developed under the cooperative agreement and have primary rights to these data. NINDS staff will have substantial programmatic involvement in the project and will assist, guide, coordinate, or participate in project activities. For each award, an NINDS project scientist will work jointly with the award recipients in a partnership role and will serve on the primary leadership committee and potential subcommittees as a voting member. An NINDS administrative program officer will be responsible for programmatic stewardship of the award. And last but not least, a third NINDS program official from our Division of Clinical Research will serve as the NINDS liaison to the Data and Safety Monitoring Board, or DSMB. Areas of joint responsibility include having access to the data generated under the Cooperative Agreement Award and periodically reviewing data and administrative progress reports, providing scientific and programmatic support during the award period, overseeing the adequacy of adverse event management and reporting, and monitoring progress of study milestones. The sharing of biospecimens from these expanded access studies is a key aspect of this RFA and will be facilitated using two established NINDS repositories. Biospecimens must come from study participants who have consented to banking and sharing broadly with academia and industry. Costs for the biospecimen collection, such as costs for collection kits, shipping kits to sites, and shipping samples, must be covered by the grantees and should be included in the application's budget. The NINDS BioSend repository is available to bank blood, CSF, or urine collected from study participants if the applicants propose collecting these. Applicants should request a quote from BioSend at the link shown here and include this information in the application. The NINDS Human Cell and Data Repository, or NHCDR, is available to bank human cells if the applicants propose collecting these. Please request a quote from NHCDR at the link provided to determine the costs. Finally, the ALS Knowledge Portal will be available to bank all data from the project. Applicants will work with NINDS program staff to determine the appropriate construct and timelines for uploading the data generated from the project into the portal in keeping with the NIH data management and sharing policy. The NIH data management and sharing policy has been in effect since early 2023. All applications must include a data management and sharing plan within the Other Plans field on the PHS 398 research plan. To make things easier, the NIH has developed an optional data management sharing plan format page that aligns with the recommended elements of a data management sharing plan, which are shown on the graphic on the right. Detailed information can be found at the NIH Data Management Sharing Policy website. NIH recognizes that making data accessible and reusable for other researchers may incur costs. For that reason, investigators may request funds towards data management and sharing in the budget and budget justification sections of their applications. These costs can include the cost for curating data developing supporting documentation, formatting data to accepted community standards, or for transmission to and storage at a selected repository for long-term preservation and access, de-identifying data, preparing metadata to foster discoverability, interpretation, and reuse, local data management considerations such as unique and specialized information infrastructure necessary to provide local management and preservation, for example, before deposit into an established repository, and finally, preserving and sharing data through established repositories, such as data deposit fees.
Thank you for joining. If you have any related questions, please submit them in the Q&A box now. And for an extensive list of frequently asked questions, visit the NINDS events page and search for this informational webinar to view the FAQs. Have a great day.